This short video is designed to introduce you to the study of place names. It's been made by 3 place name researchers from the University of Glasgow, including myself. Now, people tend to take place names for granted, but imagine if we didn't have them at all. Not only do they have a very practical function of helping us find our way in the world, they also help define our identity. They can be charged with associations, both personal and general, and can be a kind of shorthand for particular groups of society. Think of the connotations of Kelvinside in Glasgow or Pilton in Edinburgh if you're from those areas. However, place names carry many other things apart from identity and connotations. They are historical and cultural artefacts, which sometimes reach back over 1500 years. They can tell us about past languages, landscapes, land use, societies. They also, as they roll down the centuries, gather many stories and traditions, some tragic, some humorous, some moralising. In order to excavate a place name, we need many skills and tools. Historical, archaeological, environmental, but above all linguistic. Because in Scotland, there have been, in the past 1500 years, 7 languages which have left place names behind them. In this video, we'll take a look at one of those languages, Northern Brittonic. This is one of the 3 Celtic languages productive in Scottish place names, the others being Pictish and Gaelic. More on those another day. Enjoy the trip.
In order to understand some of the background to Northern Brittonic place names, let's look at the work of Bede, a scholar writing in Northumbria around the year 730 AD. We know that 4 native languages were being spoken in Britain at the time, and he calls the second of these languages the language of the British. This is the language we refer to in Scottish place name studies as Northern Brittonic, although you will see it referred to variously as Cumbric, British and Brythonic. As a Celtic language, it's related to the modern languages Scottish Gaelic, Irish, Manx Gaelic, Welsh, Cornish and Breton. If it were still spoken today, it would probably sound a lot like modern Welsh with a tinge of Gaelic. Place names tell us that Northern Brittonic was the language of the people in the kingdoms of southern parts of Scotland, such as the Kingdom of Alclute and the Kingdom of Strathclyde. The former Brittonic-speaking territories in southern Scotland and northern England are seen as part of Welsh heritage, and in Wales, these regions are still known to this day as the Old North. I'm standing at Glasgow Cathedral in the heart of Glasgow, the most famous of all Northern Brittonic place names. It simply means a green hollow, and we will return here later to look at the feature that gave rise to the name. But first we're going to take you on a brief tour of some of the other important Northern Brittonic names along the Clyde before ending up back where we started.
The remarkable feature behind me is Dumbarton Rock, or as it was known to people in this area speaking Northern Brittonic up until around 1100 AD, Alclyd. This place name literally means Clyde Rock, or Rock of Clyde. The Clyd part of Alclyd refers to the river we now know in modern English as the Clyde. You can see and hear just how little the name has changed over the last millennium or so. The Clyde is in fact one of Scotland's earliest recorded place names. It is mentioned as early as the 2nd century AD on a map produced by the Greek-speaking geographer Ptolemy. We're talking here about a river name that has been used by people living here for 2,000 years or more. Alclyd and Dumbarton Rock are not the only names for this remarkable feature of the local landscape. The name of the nearby town, Dumbarton, actually takes its name from the Gaelic name for the same feature, Dumbarton. The original N in this Gaelic name has become an M in the name of the town, but the original N survives in the name of the local counties West and East Dumbartonshire. The original Gaelic place name means Fortress of Britons. In other words, Fortress of the people speaking Northern Brittonic. Names like Dumbarton remind us that in the 1st millennium AD, when the fortress of Alclyd was occupied, 2 languages were being spoken in and around the Firth of Clyde, Northern Brittonic and its related Celtic language, Gaelic. Nearby Cowell, across the Firth of Clyde, was in fact a mainly Gaelic-speaking area from at least as early as the 6th century AD. The fortress of Alclid was the power centre of the northern Brittonic-speaking kings of this area for centuries. However, in the year 870 AD, it was destroyed by the Viking kings of Dublin, Olauvar and Ivar, now typically known in English as Olaf and Ivar. Sources of the time tell us that they besieged the fortress for 4 months before destroying and sacking it. After this, the kingdom's power centre moved upriver to Govan, and it's to Govan that we'll head next.
Well, here we are in Govan, a name more associated with shipbuilding than with early Scottish history. But in fact, Govan has been a significant place for well over 1,000 years. At Dumbarton, Alasdair spoke of the fall of Arclut in 870, and how the power centres of the British kingdom shifted further south and east, becoming known as the Kingdom of Strathclyde. This would have boosted Govan's importance as a major political and religious centre. It's first mentioned in the 8th century when it was unsuccessfully attacked by the Northumbrians. It has a large collection of carved stones from the 10th and 11th centuries, suggesting that it was a place of burial for the kings of Strathclyde. These stones include the famous Govan hogbacks. I mentioned the attack on Govan in the 8th century. This is the earliest mention of the name, which appears in the chronicle as Ovanya. The name next appears in the 12th century as Govan or Govan, and has changed little since. Govan is a northern Brittonic name composed of 2 elements, Gwo, later Go, meaning small, and Ban, a point, summit or hill. In combination it would be Govan, the small hill. Now this small hill probably refers to a massive flat-topped mound which stood just to the east of the old kirk. It's first shown on Roy's military map of Scotland from about 1750. This is an engraving of Govan in 1758 by Robert Paul. You can see the mound inside the red circle to the left of the picture. This is an artificial mound, later known as Doomster Hill, and may have been used for national assemblies and ceremonies for the Kingdom of Strathclyde, and even earlier for the Kingdom of Alclut or Dumbarton. Much later, this feature became known locally as the hillock, which translates Govan perfectly. It was levelled in the 19th century. A place closely linked with Govan on the opposite bank of the Clyde is Partick, with a ford once connecting the two. Partick is a northern Brittonic place name meaning small wood or thicket or hedge. The northern Brittonic word in the first part of this place name is closely related to the modern Welsh word Perth, which is often used to describe a hedge or bush, but can also mean a wood. It was also a Pictish word with a similar meaning, which gives us the name Perth. Partick now lies within the modern city of Glasgow, but historically it formed part of Govan parish. It was an important settlement in its own right. Early documents tell us that it was a royal estate, part of the lands of the kings of Strathclyde. The University of Glasgow stands on a corner of this old royal estate. Partick was quite separate from Glasgow for most of its history. It became a borough in 1852 and did not become part of Glasgow till 1912. We will now move further eastwards up the Clyde to where we began, Glasgow.
And this is a fitting place to talk about Glasgow because its origins are closely tied to the cathedral here behind me. In the 12th century, Govan was eclipsed by Glasgow as the main religious centre of the region following the collapse of the Kingdom of Strathclyde. As we mentioned at the outset, the name Glasgow is Northern Brittonic, meaning green hollow, containing the words glass and cow. The hollow in the name Glasgow is a deep dip in the land between the cathedral to the west and Acropolis Hill to the east. You can see the start of the slope here in the cathedral graveyard. The wall at the bottom obscures just how deep this dip is. This is the view from the bottom of the hollow, and you can see how high up the cathedral is. And through the hollow runs the Mullendiner burn. This has now been covered in, and Mullendiner is another Northern Brittonic name which contains Mullen, meaning a mill, and it's related to modern Welsh Millen with the same meaning. As the name indicates, it was the source of power for several mills along its course. It is traditionally thought that an early church was established here by St Kentigern in the 6th century. Kentigern is known locally by his pet name Mungo and is best known as the patron saint of Glasgow. Although this is not the place to discuss the historical origins of the saint, he is undoubtedly an important part of Glasgow's history. The fish, the bird and the bell on Glasgow's coat of arms all come from his miracles. A fairly recent example of his importance is this famous mural in the city depicting St Mungo that once again brings his story to the forefront. The name Glasgow also shows us how place names can be interpreted and reinterpreted. We have already stated that the name Glasgow means green hollow, but it has sometimes been interpreted as dear green place. This interpretation has its roots in the 12th century when Jocelyn of Furness writes about it in his Life of St Kentigern. Jocelyn interprets the meaning of the name Glasgow as Brittonic class, meaning a religious community, and cu, meaning deer, which gives us the deer of dear green place. So when studying place names, we always need to look out for potential reinterpretations, and it's important to note that this can be just as interesting as the original meaning in and of itself. Such reinterpretations may be able to tell us a lot about the way different communities understood place names and about the relationship with them and about their agendas.
As we've seen in this brief tour of Northern Brittonic place names in Scotland, place names are deeply rooted in our history and are a vital part of our identity. If you're interested in learning more about Scotland's place names, check out the links below.